kerajaan terus memperkukuh ketenteraman awam dan keselamatan negara dengan KDN dan MINDEF diperuntukkan sebanyak 18.3 bilion ringgit dan 17.4 bilion ringgit. Tahun 2023, usaha utama kerajaan adalah untuk melaksanakan pertama, pembelian dan penyelenggaraan aset ATM bagi meningkatkan kesiagaan pertahanan dengan peruntukan hampir 4 bilion ringgit. Kedua, pembelian dan penyelenggaraan aset PDRM bagi meningkatkan keselamatan dalam negeri dengan peruntukan 431 juta ringgit. Ketiga, penyelenggaraan semua kapal dan bot APMM bagi memastikan keselamatan kawasan maritim negara dengan peruntukan 485 juta ringgit. Keempat, perolehan alat pengimbas badan dan menaik taraf fasiliti 5 penjara, antaranya penjara Seremban Negeri Sembilan dengan peruntukan 18 juta ringgit. Dan kelima, penambahan 25 pos kawalan sepadan PGA, Immigration, Eskom, APMM, antaranya di Serikin Sarawak dan Lahad Datu Sabah.
Assalamualaikum, a very good morning and a warm welcome to Talk to Terrence. Thank you for joining me this morning as we pick apart the budget, strengthening recovery, facilitating reforms towards the socio-economic resilience of Keluarga Malaysia. That's the theme of the budget. And as we look into the details, we notice that, of course, as predicted, our income for this year is projected to be around 272 billion ringgit. That's about 13 billion off the projection of 285, which we got from last year. And however, we have a slightly bigger amount of expenditure, which has been factored in by our finance minister. So if we look at the budget, the deficit is certainly something to be concerned about. Nevertheless, the budget is aiming to do something that's quite difficult, really. Play that delicate balancing act between helping those that need the aid and assistance and also ensuring fiscal prudence. So we're going to march into this budget and we're going to talk to our guests in just a short moment. We're going to ask the questions that need to be asked. So don't go anywhere. Talk to Terrence. We'll be right back. Welcome to the show. Thank you for staying with us. Now, we are going to try our very best to pick apart the budget as best we can. We have a limited time, so let's get straight into introducing my guests. We have Muhammad FAISAL, SYED IBRAHIM, Council Member of the Malaysia Association of Tax Accountants, and also the Tax Fellow on TikTok. You can check him out for some of his great TikTok videos on tax, explaining things away in a very easy format. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Terrence, for having me.
And we also have Jason Low, Head of Social Law and Human Rights at EMIR Research. You're the one who's probably going to be doing the heavy lifting around the political questions here today. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And we also have Associate Professor Dr. Pek Chuan Kee, who is the Dean of Faculty of Business and Management at UCSI. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank
Pek,
you,
for joining
Terrence.
us.
Thank you.
And your focus is going to be education, if I'm not mistaken. So let's start off by talking about the budget in general. I'm sure you are privy to the budget speech as well. You listened to the speech live yesterday. Talk to us about where you stand in terms of tax reforms. There have been some proposed, 2% reduction for certain brackets of personal income tax and also 2% reduction in certain brackets for corporate tax, if I'm not mistaken. So talk to us about your thoughts on those reductions.
Okay, first of all, I was hoping this budget to be a responsible budget, and then it turned out to be, yes, it's a responsible budget, I think. And also that must be expansionary in nature. So that's why I feel that now it's more expansionary, more or less similar to last year's budget. They dish out some of the important budget for development, and also with regard to some tax reduction, like what you said, it's actually basically to stimulate the economy. I'll take it more than after as we go along.
All right. So the 90-something billion on development, I think that's quite a huge chunk. We've never had this much money spent on development in a while. Your thoughts on that? Start us off, Jason.
Well, the thing is this, Terrence, because with Bank Negara hiking interest rates, it's not just adding to the cost of business and to the cost of living, and thereby to the cost of to inflation, basically. it is also leaking higher borrowing costs on the part of higher coupon rate of
Right.
Malaysian government securities. So the yield is a slightly different matter. It is, in a sense, inverse to the price of the bond, but the coupon rate is fixed. So when Bank Negara, as the central bank, increases interest rate, this pushes up the government borrowing costs. I mean, at basically the wrong time, when we should be having cheaper borrowing costs.
Unfortunately, the Bank Negara interest rate hike is in tandem with the Fed's interest rate hike
That's
in
right.
the US.
And what the Fed is intending to do is monetary tightening, and it seems that they are sort of hell-bent on basically causing a recession if it means bringing inflation down, you see.
Wow.
Whereas for us, on the part of Bank Negara, it's more about monetary accommodation, being accommodative to the current economic condition. It's a bit vague, but they are probably thinking about, price stability over a long-term period of perhaps, 2.5 to 3%. But that is a bit too optimistic.
So you reckon this large development budget is to kind of offset all that?
Basically, what I'm saying is that the development budget will have to see higher debt service charges,
Right.
because our debt service charges is already at 7% of the current budget of 2023. That is close to 10%. That's very high.
All right.
And in terms of the ratio to GDP, it is nearly 20%, when the recommended should be around 12 and below percent. And the Auditor General as well has said that for every 1 ringgit in revenue that we received, 18 cents or 20 cents goes up to pay the debt service charges.
Absolutely. So these are very interesting times. But nevertheless, education takes up the second largest allocation for this budget. I'm quite happy to see that the focus on education has included providing nutrition to our kids in school. There's been a large allocation for food for the kids. So I'm quite happy to see there's also new schools to be constructed in Sabah, Sarawak, Terengganu, and these are areas that definitely need new schools. But your thoughts coming from the higher education field about the budget and its allocation for education?
I think for the higher education ministry, we just get about 15.1 billion, which I thought that it can be much more, looking into the needs of us, working into R&D, and also at the same time trying to look into how we can actually bring in ESG into the curriculum and also to the things that we want to look at. So looking at the allocation of the budget, it's basically for scholarships, it's basically for education loans, and also looking at TVET as well. So we have SPM leavers, who might not be interested to go into academic education, but they might be interested in skill sets. So this TVET comes in very timely.
That's beautiful. I mean, that's in tandem with what Google, Facebook, Tesla, they're doing. They're
Exactly.
focusing not on the academic degrees anymore, but on skill
Right.
sets. So I think this push and focus towards TVET is something positive. Let's come back to tax for a moment. We have dwindling revenue. I mean, from 285 to 272, that's quite a huge loss. Wouldn't you think it would be more prudent to increase certain tax brackets, catch more money here and there, or introduce new taxes like maybe capital gains tax or wealth tax?
Okay, you have rightly pointed out, it's actually the gap is about 13 billion now, from what was announced in the budget. Okay, introducing a new tax measure is one of the ideal way of doing it, but not at this time. It's not right time because we are just recovering from the pandemic, and then we are actually basically to recovering, we are the recovery phase, as well as that the government also need to be, because as we know that now it's an impending election coming in. So it's not basically to say that, to sum it up, what I can say is that if you look at the tax measure, it's always come connected to the political cost.
Right.
Okay, so that because of the political cost in nature, so it's not easy to say that I want to impose tax here, regardless of categories of people down in the nation. Okay, whether it's a wealthy or not wealthy or B40, you can't introduce new tax at this stage. But of course, there's a revenue strain here. But what we see from this budget here is that the government has specified that this number of budget expenditure that is required is 372 billion approximately, and then the revenue from the tax is actually they put it also around that figure. I mean, they have taken other measures. Basically, to budgeting for other measures to increase the revenue. Okay, look at the tax leakages. Okay, and also what other measures to improve that there are a group of people who are not paying tax actually.
Well,
Where we
yes.
can issue tax.
There's a new tax ID which is going to be introduced also under this budget. That means every taxpayer is going to have an ID.
Yes, right.
Is that one way to actually curb leakages and ensure everybody pays tax?
Yeah, precisely that. Because the TIN, the call tax identification number, is actually introduced in the last year budget, 2022 budget. Okay, and then it's actually already ongoing. So that this TIN is actually basically put everybody in the tax above 18 years old put into the tax net. Okay, so it's easier for the LHDN or tax authorities to actually look into this aspect to increase the revenue.
Right.
Okay, so they can do many ways. One is that they can actually educate the newcomers into the tax net. Okay, as well as also taking a punitive action those from the tax evaders. I think.
All right. So let's look at some politics now and examine a little bit more about the politics behind the budget. When it comes to welfare, we see a long list of goodies that have been announced.
Yes.
But I can't help but notice that there's been a slice in subsidies by 12 billion. And this is after we note that the subsidies help bring down inflation.
Yep.
So now with these subsidies gone, I do suppose that maybe inflation might go up again. So what is the rationale for reducing subsidies? Is it something that we just couldn't afford to keep on doing? Has that realization set in?
Based on my reading, I think that is because of the pre-budget allocation of some 77.7 billion ringgit for subsidies, the huge chunk of which has gone for the petrol subsidies. I think this reduction in 12 billion ringgit is quite significant. It might not necessarily sort of push up inflation as such, or we may not necessarily see accelerating inflation, but we will definitely see a further loss of purchasing power on the part of the rakyat, In other words, they'll have to spend more money out of their own pockets, and this would, of course, see prices of certain goods, going up a bit.
Okay, but with this loss of subsidies,
yes.
will it be offset by the tax breaks, the 2% reduction in tax? So you put some money back into the riot's pocket with
Good
the
point.
2%,
Yes.
and you, of course, remove some subsidies.
Yes. I think that would have some neutralizing impact, but because it is a neutral impact, it doesn't sort of increase the purchasing power of the rakyat, and we are also talking about the ringgit's depreciation as well. So in a time of the ringgit depreciation, I fail to see anything that is in the budget that will sort of help to cushion the rakyat from the what would be known as the cost pass-through exchange, meaning to say that the impact of the local currency's depreciation on the domestic prices via imports.
Previously, we had guests on this show stress that we need to put the focus on teachers, we need to give teachers a little bit more allocation. We have to help teachers teach and take away administrative burdens. I know the budget doesn't speak to that specifically, but I would like to understand what you think about the role of teachers and how the budget has helped to elevate their status.
Yeah.
While you think about that, we're going to go for a quick break and we'll come back with Dr. Beck's answer right after this. We are talking about the budget on Talk to Terrence, and I know there have been some detractors, there have been some angry tweets. But of course, for those of you out there who have studied the budget, you are looking at both sides of the story. You want to get a fair analysis. I think you come to the right place. We have discussed some of the cons and some of the pros of the budget. We're focusing on education now, and Dr. Beck, I would like to know where you see teachers in all of this, because two guests on two concurrent shows have told me that we need to put the focus on teachers. Yet I don't quite see it in this budget.
Yeah. So, Terrence, what we see now is that being a teacher today is very much different, from being a teacher in the past 10 to 20 years. Teachers now are mostly being loaded with a lot of administrative jobs besides teaching, besides coaching the kids and the children. And therefore, what we need to do now is to really ensure that the teachers have enough rest time, and also at the same time, the mental health of the teachers are taken care of. So basically, what we can do is that we hope that this budget in the allocation will actually spend a little bit more on digitalization, and also at the same time, bring in automation into the system, and that will definitely reduce the burden of the teachers. Yeah, and then at the same time, in schools and all that, we talk about SDGs these days. Yeah, so mental health is one of the very important SDG that we have to look into. So basically, I really hope that this budget that is allocated will actually bring in computerization, automation that will really help the teachers.
There's 2.3 billion to ensure students have a conducive and safe learning environment in the budget. How do you think this money will be spent?
I think basically when you talk about the safe environment and all that, perhaps during COVID-19, we need to have certain things that we have to make sure. All right, so perhaps the SOPs will be funded, with some of this money, and at the same time we have to heighten the security of the schools, where we can have more guards to look into the schools, and also at the same time we have this partnership with the local police, where they can actually patrol around the schools, and we hope that kids will be kept safe.
Well, those are some of the allocations for education. Let's come back to talk about tax for a bit. Corporate tax. There is a standardized corporate tax movement out there, which preaches that all countries have basically a standard 15% corporate tax. Our corporate tax sits very high above that position right now. What are your thoughts on this, and how soon do you think this will come into effect for Malaysia?
Okay. Basically, the rules for this top-up tax is actually does not very much affect the smaller companies. It's actually large companies. Okay, in Europe, because it's 750 billion euro and above turnover, so they will be caught into this tax. Okay, the idea of fair share tax is actually brought up by OECD or developed countries. Basically, they say that Malaysia need a higher fair share of tax so that it can become a developing country. They need more fund revenue to actually develop the country. So that's how it actually goes about it. Okay, so in order to have the fair share of tax, number one is that the government actually looking at it. The way I look at it is actually is that by going into that, because we have 24% tax versus the 15% tax, right? Okay, so by going to that, okay, number one, what we need to do is that it may affect the local tax statute, the tax law need be amended. Okay, especially it involves the permanent establishment and also double taxation agreement within other countries. So they need to make do of this thing to facilitate this 15% tax. And then on top of that is that if the tax goes down below the rate, it can actually be top up to 15%. But the idea is that we have to go along with this thing because to bring in the foreign direct investment, which is very much needed in our country. So that is one component. Is actually the government really need to have see that. So it goes along with that. Otherwise, I think from this top up, this one is we have a very few companies affected. Only that the foreign national come and invest in our country. Then if the effective tax rate or the tax rate is below 15%, we'll have a top-up tax rate.
Well, as it stands, we do have a lot of new foreign companies that have just started operations here in Malaysia. One on the top of my mind is Scandinavian IBS, which just opened its brand new plant in Penang. So it's a brand new plant. They basically construct IBS blocks they ship those blocks back to Sweden and they build apartments. So they've constructed a brand new plant. Will new plants like this be affected by new corporate tax law moving forward? What do you think the strategy should be if we already give them an incentive for starting up here?
Okay, basically what happened is that I think most European countries or foreign investors will prefer Southeast Asia or any regional that actually a favorable environment beside the tax. Tax is also one component, but the other things also they look at it, which is actually favorable investment climate, the people, and many other things, the government's what they support and etc. So because this is what is actually the component looking at it, but most countries that where they are coming from or came from is actually given them the incentive to move back to their own country, because their own country also need to generate those investments. So in the light of this incentive or thing, I believe that the current tax incentive that we are to doing it should be there. It should be there to support this, and moreover that this top-up tax rate tax scheme here is expected to, from the budget when I read through this, is expected to only be implemented in year 2024, not 2023 as earlier predicted. This is more so because other countries who actually that I think that those two countries actually who actually started this, like European countries like Germany or UK, they're also looking into deferring this scheme,
Right.
So that during this period, that I think probably we have to get it's an opportunity for us to basically to go on with current system, to enhance it, to bring in more direct investment. Probably that will help.
There's a new fiscal responsibility additional component to this budget that's been introduced by the finance minister, which aims to tackle, of course, corruption and other issues that are hotbed topics. And it's, I believe, something to do with the upcoming general election. They want to show that, the government of the day is serious about tackling corruption. What are the key components that you're looking for in something like that, a mechanism to curb corruption? What should be in to ensure that the money that has been allocated for Project X actually gets spent on Project X and there's no leakages?
You see, Terrence, one of the fundamental elements that should be in what is meant to be a Fiscal Responsibility Act is, number one, all mega projects should have the approval of Parliament. Right now, we have mega projects like MRT3. Yes, of course, it's meant to benefit the rakyat. But, as usual, mega projects easily run into costs overruns, So you can have a project that is originally estimated as 30 billion, then in about 3 to 4 years' time, would balloon to 50 billion, And these are taxpayers' money that we are talking about, you see. So, in the future, to ensure that there is proper accountability and transparency in the cost estimates and in the planning and in the tendering system, all mega projects must be presented to Parliament for debate, scrutiny and approval.
I think we can all agree with that.
Yes.
I mean, it sounds right because we've elected those members of Parliament to be there to represent our interests, and they should be the ones to scrutinize such huge projects. If we look at the list of development projects that are being proposed, 510 million to improve road infrastructure to Pengerang. We have the Pan Borneo Highway that's going to be completed in 2024. No additional allocation for that, but we never know. As you said, there might be increments incurred. 11.4 billion for the maintenance and repair of an existing number of government buildings. 5.2 billion for the maintenance of state roads. 150 million for the development of border towns near Thailand and Kalimantan. And 3.7 billion for small and medium projects across the nation. I don't know, the allocation is stated as this. I'm sure there's justification for it. But do you mean to say that every time this comes up, one of these projects comes up, Parliament needs to sit and they need to check every single cent spent?
Very good point, Terrence. Basically, what I was referring to are mega projects. So there should be a sort of a expenditure threshold, So if you got a threshold that sort of run into billions, like for example, let's say any project that is 10 or 20 billion and above should be looked at by Parliament, for example,
All right,
Yes.
so let's move on to social welfare. I think we can all agree that the budget has done its best to
Yes.
cater for every
Yes,
need.
that's true.
It has been difficult to do this. I mean, despite, of course, the challenging times. When we look at social welfare, what are the key points that you find has caught your eye in this budget, Dr. Peck?
Yeah, I think basically the allocation that has been given to the Orang Asli, basically 305 million, is actually allocated for the Orang Asli, helping them to replant projects. They are replanting projects such like rubber and also palm oil. So what happened next is that the allocation is also to train the Orang Asli to become entrepreneurs. I think that is a good one, where they will be self-sustained in the future. So we start off with letting them having the skill sets, all right, and then later on we'll leave them to run the business on their own, and that will be sustainable. Yeah.
How about you, Jason? Which part of the social welfare allocation caught your eye?
I come from a slightly different position. I do agree that forging and fostering entrepreneurship is very important. And this applies also to the area of agriculture, talking about agropreneurship, and especially quite critical in the context of food security. But for now, what caught my eye was of course the increment in the Bantuan Keluarga Malaysia of, if I'm not mistaken, of 2,500 ringgit for a household of, I think, 4 children and above, So I think that's quite good. But at the same time as well, the government has to think long term, whether this is sustainable, in light of the need of, for example, our pensions and emoluments, which is growing every year,
We're trying to get towards the 70 million Malaysian target, but I don't
Exactly.
know whether we can get there.
Exactly, yeah.
Given the cost. You have a large family compared to most people I know. Talk to us about rising costs and how this budget has helped address the needs of larger families.
Okay, you're right. Okay, because being a larger family, the cost of living is definitely high, and then we have to spend more items. Okay, in fact, on the hindsight, my wife always would say that the prices of goods, all the vegetables or household items, all has gone up. Then not gone up a little bit, but substantially had gone up. Okay, what I see is that the government did try to alleviate this problem. That okay. One thing is that, of course, on the macro perspective, is that having this OPR raised so that the inflation can be controlled. Okay, because what happened in the last year when the OPR was low, even it's so easy for those who can't afford to buy a car can buy a car, for instance.
But what would you say the OPR is not being increased? It's going back to where it was.
Yeah.
It was
Exactly.
high at one point, and then it came down,
True,
and then now it's going back to where it came from.
Yeah, that's the right point. Okay, I'd like to say that.
Normalization of OPR. We'll come back and talk about the large family aid and assistance that the budget has allocated. We're going to take another quick break, and when we come back, we'll try to address the concerns of rising cost of goods, especially for larger families. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back. Thank you for staying with us on Talk to Terrence. And we left off talking about larger families. Now, of course, the OPR, which is the rate that bank use to borrow money, lend money to each other, that's been going up. But actually, if you look at history, it's just been going back to where it came from. Now, that actually kind of cascades across the board, and everything has now had an inflationary effect. This, of course, affects the people on the street the most, the person who goes out to buy groceries, especially individuals with larger families. So talk to us about how the budget helps address those concerns and tries to alleviate some of the pain points.
Okay, generally what the budget is trying to help alleviate is that through the Bantuan Keluarga Malaysia. Okay, that's one part of it, and then they have also some other dishes they given like e-Pemula, and also they reduce the individual tax rate from 21% to 19% for middle income group.
Middle income.
Okay? Those with a tax ban within 70,000 to 100,000. Okay, so All this actually, basically, we're trying to help to alleviate all this cost of living and thing. Okay, basically, if you look at the middle income level, okay, the basically government giving back about 1,000 ringgit according to budget. It's giving the 1,000 ringgit back to the taxpayer. So that amount they can spend for the retail sector. So simultaneously, if you look at the other side, the retail sector will have that economic stimulate or thing. So these are some of the dishes that they're giving that. Other than that, so I think school children, I'm glad to have that 150 ringgit. Actually, I can use for 4 kids. Okay, no cap at the income level, right? Okay, so that is something that I think to help to alleviate all this costs.
I would have thought that the budget would actually give us something for parents. I mean, I know there's an elderly welfare aid of 1 billion in the budget, but parents, this deduction on your income tax of 1,500 ringgit has not been revised for quite a while. I mean, I think they maybe should have increased that or kept it on. And even for the disabled, I don't really quite see a lot of allocations for that group of people. Do you see anything different? Am I reading the budget wrong?
No. Actually, there's some incentive they actually extended. Okay, the other incentive like they actually giving opportunity for the ex-convicts to go back to the workforce. So all those people like OKU, these people actually I think be taken care of, like to make sure they actually continue to be taken care of. So they basically anything they're expiring, they extend it.
So all those existing tax breaks and incentives will be continued in this budget?
Yes, right.
All right. So that's something that probably we can clarify. When we move on, I want to focus on health, because health has been something of a concern for us in the recent years because of the COVID pandemic, and there's a special allocation just for that in the budget. However, the booming costs of healthcare, how do you think this budget addressed that? Jason?
Well, Terrence, I mean, as we know, for budget 2022, healthcare received the largest share, of around 53 to 55 billion, followed by education and higher education. This time around, it's a bit surprising that the Ministry of Finance received the largest share,
right,
and only followed by health.
Followed by education.
Then health in third place. I'm sorry. So that actually begs the question, does it send out the wrong signal, that the government at this time is, in a sense, deprioritizing health at the time when we should be sort of perhaps ensure that health is in the top two,
There's a separate allocation for COVID though. Yeah. So that's in the peripheral budget.
Yes. But we have COVID and we have long COVID, the impact of COVID in long term, But we must also remember that non-communicable diseases, NCDs, is a growing and major concern in the Malaysian, health scene, where, for example, obesity, Malaysia ranks perhaps the top in the whole of Southeast Asia. And then lung cancer, heart diseases are also a major contributor as well, So, and at the time when health funding is, despite being allocated quite a large chunk, still comes under tremendous pressure, and there's the question of whether or not the allocation is being effectively deployed, in well spent.
Well, that's why they have the Fiscal Responsibility Act to ensure that it's...
Exactly. So, I think that for budget 2023, attention should also be given for health prevention as well.
Right.
So, I think that there should be some kind of a strategic allocation for health prevention. For disease prevention.
Wellness, basically.
Preventative health management, wellness, and also, for example, how do we ensure that the rakyat leads a healthier lifestyle, and are better informed, for example, through labeling for example, some of these practical measures that we can put.
Dr. Beck, your take on
Right.
healthcare budget?
Yeah, having said that, I think Malaysia has one of the best healthcare system in the
I can't
country,
disagree.
and I have to thank the government for that. To be very honest, looking at the allocation of 34 million, on mental health, I think that is something commendable, because after the COVID, people are actually having this mental health issues, ranging from young kids up to people who are of the senior ages. We see people across the races, across the age and income group, they suffer from mental health issues. So basically, I see this as a very, very good initiative of the government, and we hope that the mental health system will be much improved in days to come.
They're also shouting to the world that Malaysia is a good place to come for medical tourism. 20 million being
Right.
allocated for that. Do you think this is a growing sector for Malaysia that we have yet to really explore? We do have the Malaysia Healthcare Travel Council,
Yep.
but nevertheless, the revenue from healthcare tourism probably took a dip because of COVID-19. Do you think it's worth revisiting medical tourism?
Yeah, that definitely. Because if you look at the hospitals over in Penang, we realize that all the private hospitals are actually extending their buildings, and they are now welcoming back again all the patients, basically from Indonesia and also locally, that will come over to Penang for healthcare. And then this basically the healthcare tourism is something whereby I think it is worth, to look into it seriously.
There is an allocation, Jason, for leading a healthier lifestyle, but I don't think you're going to be happy with the amount. It's 15 million ringgit. So I think a lot more can be done there.
A lot more can be done. And of course, it requires PPP, public-private partnerships, So we need to think strategically in this sense, because we know that Singapore has allocated, I think, at least 1 billion Singapore dollars, for a sort of a new national health scheme, where, they are planning to bring primary health care closer to the neighborhoods, for example, so that people can go to consult their local doctors on a more regular basis, so it's part of the overall lifestyle, So we need to integrate such kind of practices into the culture of society.
Next up, I want to talk about discounts. That's something everybody likes. Let's talk about discounts on purchasing houses. Do you see something for first home buyers that was missing before? Have the existing stamp duties being maintained, or do we have like a discount for first home buyers? Because of course, there's going to be rising interest rates. So buying a house is not going to be so easy.
Okay, basically what this is not so much of a discount, but stamp duty. The stamp duty for first home buyer was actually given in the previous budget. Okay, it's actually continuing until now.
Okay.
But what they are actually promoting now is actually the love and affection between family members, transfer of property, that now instead of adding a value, because normally when it comes to stamp duty, the instrument of transfer, from the value of 100,000 to up to 1 million and above, the range of the tax rate, the stamp duty rate can go from 1% to 4%. So that's quite a huge sum. So now they actually said for love and affection between husband and wife, parents and children, with the grandfather and grandchildren, 10 ringgit only you pay.
10 ringgit.
10 ringgit.
Wow, that's great. I mean, this is in addition to, of course, the one-off gift that you can actually give and waive the stamp duty altogether. So, in addition, if you're someone with more than 10 houses, 10 children, it's going to be beneficial for you in the long run to make such transfers. Anything else for?
Other than that, the property sector is a bit it's not visible yet. Okay? Of course, I also need to digest everything, but that's not really visible. Whether how they are going to stimulate the property sector.
They seem to want to build more houses. I don't understand.
Is that because I think the problem now is it's actually the home ownership. Because home ownership is very lacking, especially among the newcomers, the group, the new generation. Other than that, I think at a luxury property level also, it could not be sold because of the price issue. So overall, basically to sum this up, is actually the property sector. They need some incentives actually to boost, to enable the enablers Basically, the people down there who can afford to buy, can't afford to buy it.
All right, we are looking at discounts now and PTPTN repayments. There are discounts galore, Dr. Peck.
Yeah, I think definitely the students will benefit from that. Yeah, and again, the discount is there. So therefore, we should encourage all those who have taken this loan to make sure that they pay the loan. Yeah, for the benefit of the future generations. So we must, do the payback as soon as possible. So with these discounts, I think it is time for those who have not been paying to start paying.
There's also discounts on electronic vehicles, but I don't know if you want to buy an electronic vehicle yet because we don't have the charging stations in place.
That's right.
Jason, do you think it's time to actually give discounts for electronic vehicles without the infrastructure?
You're right, Terrence. Actually, I don't think it's the right time. I think we still have a long way to go before we make sure that the electric vehicles are properly popularized, Because the thing is that why not think strategically in a sense that why not position Malaysia to be a hub for the production of electric vehicles for the export market, and at the same time for charging stations and for the batteries, Because we have Indonesia able to secure investment from Tesla, Malaysia has left out on such strategic foreign direct investments.
Well, we do have startups that are moving into the charging station sphere. So we have some startups in that field. So I think that's probably something that we can capitalize on instead of
it's a good start.
Building EVs. We can build the chargers instead. So on that note, I would like to go around the table. One final sentence from each of you to sum up your thoughts on the budget. We'll start with you, Mr. Air Tax Guy, but in just a short moment when we come back after this break. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. We're at the final thoughts segment where we get a wrap up from my guests as they take you on their final thoughts about the budget. It's quite shocking to see how well received the budget was and also how much bad tweets the budget got. So it's kind of a balance out there in terms of opinions of the public. Let's see if we can sway you one way or the other. So we'll start with you, sir. Your opinion on the budget in, let's say, 1 minute.
Okay. Look at the development. Look at the budget allocation. It's actually about 272 billion. Okay, and the current asset is about 200 million only. That means that we actually lack of revenue to support. It's just nice to support all the development budget. So we have to. There's time for the government to look into how actually can increase the tax revenue. By increasing tax revenue, it's the only way that actually can build up more revenue in order to support the nation development. Like all these gentlemen were saying that we need more funding and allocation, all those stuff. So this all must come from the additional tax revenue. How to do this actually is that look at the alternative approach. In the past, the government actually shifted its policy, shifting the policy from direct to indirect tax. Then comes a situation that's where they actually introduced GST. Then after that, it changed back to SST. Yep. So imperative now is actually looking forward to go back into the indirect tax. Okay, although the SST is there, it can be improved. But then it's also must look at whether the implemented GST is critical or not. Because
GST, a hybrid system like Canada.
It could be that one option because the GST rate is very unique because you can tweak during the good and bad time for economy. And also there are also comments from public who say that GST is regressive because all are paying tax, including the poor. But this actually be offset by cash handout like Bantuan Keluarga Malaysia, or similar for other countries. So they're doing the same thing according to the measurement.
And also zero-rated goods.
So moving forward, I know it's not the right time to look at new tax measures, new tax revenue, but moving forward, I think there's something critically government needs to look at this.
Absolutely, I agree with you there. When it comes to development, your final thoughts on the 90-some billion that we're spending on development this year?
Yes. Well, I think the government would have to think very carefully on how it would be able to secure more allocation in the future from non-tax revenue for development. I know it is customary for development to come from borrowings, MGS, and so on and so forth. But I think there is also a case to be made for having a proper sovereign wealth fund that would have the resources and capacity to invest abroad, and the proceeds would then return to be reinvested.
Didn't we try
domestic
that before?
development.
Didn't we try that once already? Sovereign wealth funds.
To my knowledge, I don't think we have tried before. To my knowledge, because 1MDB, they never self-style themselves as sovereign wealth fund.
Okay.
They call themselves strategic development company, and they insist that they are not a sovereign wealth fund. And for them, I mean, theirs is more towards investments abroad, and then the proceeds are also reinvested in overseas projects and so on and so forth. So I'm thinking more of local projects,
Okay.
you know, Terrence. Yeah, but in terms of, can I mention my views, sum up about the budget as well?
Please, go right ahead.
Yeah, I think it's undoubtedly a very comprehensive, very inclusive, and very holistic budget. It's quite a commendable budget, although, you know, a cynicist would say that it is more of an election goodie budget. But at the same time as well, I see that there are suggestions for improvements, you know. But before that, I'm thankful to the finance minister for incorporating certain policy measures that we at EMIR Research we have already advanced before. For example, like income tax and a reduction in corporate tax for the SMEs, you know, among other things. But suggestions for improvements, I believe that Budget 2023 should have provided allocation for SMEs to tap into RCEP and CPTPP, the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is due to come into effect on November 29. So, because when you have so-called zero or near zero tariffs, it does not automatically mean frictionless, you know, market penetration and entry. You still need to have some kind of credit exports, you know, help for SMEs, financing, and so on and so forth. And secondly, where are the measures to cushion the impact of ringgit depreciation vis-a-vis the USD? You know, the rakyat desperately needs help in terms of being able to have a buffer against the impact of cost pass-through, because we know that we spend at least 63 billion ringgit every year on food imports alone. That really affects our balance of payments, you know.
Absolutely.
So why isn't the government working with Bank Negara and using our monetary power in terms of forex reserves, you know, to set up a fund, for example, you know? And then I would like to see, I would have liked to see the introduction of capital gains tax, wealth tax, and special GST. You know, in other words, a multi-tiered GST, which is only specifically focused on certain sectors. You know, like for example, in Sri Lanka, they have a special GST which is focused on certain sectors like automotive and gaming, for example. And then lastly, I didn't see any strategic and targeted investments in renewable energy projects like solar farms, for example. Yeah. Thanks,
right.
Terrence. That is about.
Over to you, Dr. Beck. Your final thoughts on the budget and where you see us having some shortcomings and where you see us having some big wins.
Okay, so basically, when you look at the budget, I agree with Jason. It is comprehensive, but I wish to see more efforts in looking into climate change, for example. For example, looking into ESG. So these are important things that I think the nation should be embarking on to ensure that we are able to achieve what we have promised to be net zero by 2050. Then basically, I would like to share this. It is very interesting that we have a 10 million Ringgit Malaysia allocation for Green Campus Initiative in public universities. And that is commendable, because when we try to educate our students and the younger generations, they will then understand what's the importance of ensuring that the climate change is mitigated, ESG is being practiced, so that we can have a new form of industry, for example. And that leads...
I know they did say that carbon tax will be introduced. Do you think
that would have to depend, but at the moment I don't think that will be realized in the next 5 years or so, right? So that brings me back to looking into the micro and small, medium enterprises of ours. Yeah, I think the government, the allocation, especially in terms of the reduction of income tax from 17 to 15% for the first 100,000, that is good. Yeah, however, I wish to see more monthly type of assistance, because if you do not help them to sustain monthly, we don't talk about at the year end, having to pay the income tax, right? Cash flow problems and all that. Right. So that is very important. And also, it is very applauding, that the government is also putting aside 305 million, for youth to start off with their businesses. And that coincides very well with our micro and small medium enterprises, which make up 98% of the businesses in Malaysia.
Wow, this has been quite the conversation. I think we can go on because there are still a lot of avenues that we haven't covered. There are allocations for rural communities, there are allocations for digital connectivity, there are allocations for transport, defense. To pick apart the budget, we need 3 hours. So we're going to end here, and we hope that you guys have questions on the budget. Please send them to us in the comment section down below if you're watching this on Facebook, and we'll try to get that addressed. We have our panel of experts who will be joining us all week on HeartTM, just picking apart the budget. And I know the budget is still up for debate, so we're going to be looking forward to those spirited debates coming from members of the opposition. I can already see some of their tweets, and I know they're going to go for it. So I hope they do, and I hope they challenge the government on the budget and help get the best possible outcome after those thought-provoking conversations are had in Parliament. We're looking forward, of course, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you watching right now, also to see how the general election and the timing of it all will play into it. So I'm just going to quickly answer vis-a-vis what was said by the Finance Minister. If in the event Parliament is dissolved at any time in the near future, then the new government will have to table the budget all over again. That's precedent from 1999. I hope that answers your questions on that. And on that note, thank you very much for joining me on Talk to Terrence. And I would like to thank all my guests, Dr. Beck, thank you, Jason, thank you, FAISAL, for joining us. And don't forget to follow him on TikTok for some tax updates. We are going to be closing off the show right now. We've got Jazz in Spirit with some money-related music. Thank you for being here. I'm Terrence, and I'll see you again next week. Assalamualaikum.
It's not about the money, money, money. We don't need the money, money, money. We just want a world dance. Forget about the price tag. Ain't about it, cha-ching, cha-ching. Ain't about it, ba-bing, ba-bing. Wanna make the world dance. Forget about the price tag. Seems like everybody got a price. I wonder how they sleep at night. When the sale comes first and the truth comes second, just stop for a minute and smile. Why is everybody so serious? Acting so damn mysterious. Got shades on your eyes and a heel so high that you can't even make good time. Everybody look to their left, and everybody look to their life. Then you feel that, we're paying that love tonight. It's not about the money, money, money. We don't need your money, money, money. We just wanna make the world dance. Forget about the price tag. Ain't about it, cha-ching, cha-ching. Ain't about it, ba-bing, ba-bing. Wanna make the world dance. Forget about the price tag. We don't need the money, money, money. We don't need the money, money, money. We just wanna make the world dance. Forget about the price tag.